The low, guttural rumble of 5 diesel engines was a sound that didn't belong here, in this quiet corner of the world. Our Humvees formed a perfect, intimidating cordon around the tiny regional airport terminal, their desert-tan frames bristling with antennas that seemed to scrape the sky. I saw the town's single sheriff car, its lights flashing impotently, the deputy just standing by his door with his mouth hanging open. Through the terminal glass, I could see the pale, upturned faces of people holding their phones high. The door of my lead vehicle swung open, and I stepped out into the noise and the sudden silence of the onlookers. There he was, my uncle Dave, a man whose entire identity was built on being the most important car dealer in a 3-county radius. He stood frozen, his hand halfway to his mouth, his face a perfect canvas of confusion curdling into rage. "Alex?" He finally sputtered, his voice thin against the engine noise. "What in God's name is this?" I met his gaze, my own eyes feeling like chips of ice. My voice was level, cutting through the air with practiced authority. "Stand down, civilian. This is now a designated military operation. Just 2 hours before, I was in another world." The air in the skiff was cold, sterile, and smelled faintly of ozone from the servers. I was standing before a digital map, running a final readiness check for Operation Chimera, a massive training exercise that had consumed my life for months. My Master Chief was methodically running through logistics when my encrypted sat phone buzzed. It was a message on the family group chat, a forum I usually kept muted. But something made me look. The message was from my younger cousin. It contained a single, gut-wrenching photo of my grandmother, Eleanor, an 82-year-old woman looking impossibly small and lost on a hard plastic bench inside the airport. Her hands were folded in her lap, her posture one of tired, patient waiting. The caption beneath the photo was what broke something inside of me. It just said, "LOL, Uncle Dave forgot Grandma again. Stranded." The casual cruelty of that LOL, the public acknowledgement of a casual neglect that had become a family joke. It was too much. A familiar coldness washed over me, the one I felt every time Dave's thoughtlessness was brushed aside. This wasn't just a forgotten errand. This was the man who was supposed to pick her up from a heart procedure and got tied up, the man who promised to fix her leaky roof and never showed. This photo and that snickering caption was the final entry in a long, silent ledger of disrespect I kept in my head. A switch flipped. The anger wasn't hot and messy, it was cold, precise, and absolute. He thought it was a funny little family blunder, another story to tell at Christmas about scatterbrained Dave. He had no idea he had just failed a critical duty of care in the eyes of someone who could mobilize a quick reaction force faster than he could find his car keys. To understand the reckoning that rolled into that parking lot, you have to understand the 2 lives I was living. To them, I was a ghost. A strange, absent figure who appeared at holidays, thinner than they remembered, with a haunted look in my eyes they mistook for sadness. They didn't understand that it was just exhaustion, the kind that comes from living a double life. One life was for them, a carefully constructed narrative of polite smiles and vague answers. The other was my reality, a world so far removed from their suburban barbecues that it might as well have been on another planet. It was a chasm I could never expect them to cross. I remember the last 4th of July I managed to attend. The air was thick with the smell of scorched hot dogs and my uncle's cheap cigars. My uncle, Dave, owner of Dave's Dealership Dynamos, and the self-appointed CEO of our family, was holding court by the grill. He had his arm slung around my cousin, his son Mark, the undisputed golden child who had recently been promoted to assistant sales manager. A real go-getter, this one. Dave boomed, loud enough for the neighbors to hear. "He's got the killer instinct. Runs in the family, you know." Everyone nodded and murmured their approval, my own parents included, their smiles wide and genuine. Mark just soaked it in. His charisma a shield he used to deflect any real responsibility. Later, Dave found me by the wilting potato salad, a condescending smile plastered on his face. "So, Alex," he began, his voice dropping to a confidential whisper that was somehow louder than his shouting. "Still playing G.I. Jane in the desert? You know, your grandmother worries. It's not too late to get a real job, find a nice fella, and settle down." I just nodded, my jaw tight. I didn't see the point in explaining. In his eyes, I was a misguided novelty, a child playing a dangerous game. The internal ledger in my mind flipped through its pages. This was the same man who told me my college scholarship was a fluke, and that I'd be back home waiting tables in a year. The disrespect wasn't just an opinion, it was the very foundation of our relationship. That was their world, a place of surface-level achievements and loud proclamations. My world was silent. It was the profound, humming silence of a sensitive, compartmented information facility, a sterile box buried deep inside a naval base where sunlight was a rumor. In this world, there was no loud praise, only the quiet, heavy weight of responsibility. I stood before a digital map projected on a vast screen, the room occupied by only 3 other people: a stone-faced two-star admiral, a senior CIA liaison who looked permanently jet-lagged, and my master chief, a man who trusted me with his life. I pointed a laser at a blinking red dot on the map. Our insertion window is 0200, contingent on ISR confirming the target package is isolated, I said, my voice calm and even. This is a kinetic operation with a high probability of enemy contact. I introduced the man standing quietly by the door. This is Master Chief Petty Officer Gallo, I stated. Everyone calls him Styx. He's a man who communicates more with a single nod than most people do with a 10-minute speech, and he's my senior enlisted advisor. Styx gave a short, almost imperceptible nod to the Admiral, his eyes never leaving the tactical display. He was my rock, the one person in my professional life who saw past my rank and just saw my competence. His quiet belief in me was an armor I wore into every mission. Styx will lead Alpha Team on direct action, I continued, my focus absolute. Bravo will provide overwatch from these coordinates. The exfil route is hot, so the window is tight. This is a go or no-go based on my team's real-time threat assessment on the ground. The Admiral listened without interruption, his gaze fixed on me. He wasn't listening to his niece, the G.I. Jane. He was listening to his lieutenant commander, an operational leader to whom he had entrusted the lives of 50 elite operators and the success of a mission with national security implications. My word wasn't just my bond, it was the line between life and death for my men. Here, in the quiet dark, I wasn't the family's strange, invisible child. I was the one who made the final call. For years, I endured their condescension because it was easier than explaining a world they couldn't comprehend. But they had disrespected the one person I wouldn't allow to be a casualty of their ignorance. They only understood status and spectacle. Fine. I decided I would finally speak to them in the only language they understood. In the cold, quiet briefing room, the storm inside me subsided. The hot, messy rage that had flared up when I saw that photo of my grandmother receded, and in its place was something far more dangerous, a profound crystalline clarity. My entire life I had been trained to assess a problem, identify the available assets, and execute a solution with overwhelming efficiency. The problem was my uncle's disrespect. The asset was a team of 50 bored Navy SEALs. And the solution? The solution was about to become official. I turned away from the digital map and faced the Admiral. He was watching me, his expression unreadable, but his eyes were sharp. He had seen the shift in my demeanor. I kept my voice steady, professional, and devoid of the fury that was still simmering beneath the surface. "Sir," I said, my tone formal, "my team requires an immediate opportunity drill to test our rapid deployment and civilian extraction capabilities in a domestic setting." I didn't ask for a favor. I presented a tactical necessity. I laid it out for him, my mind already sketching the operational logistics on a whiteboard. I gave it a name: Operation Silver Guardian. The objective was clear: execute a non-combatant extraction of a vulnerable U.S. citizen from a public transport hub. I detailed the plan, allocating vehicles from the motor pool already prepped for our other exercise, assigning my own team who were on standby, and outlining the protocols for establishing a secure perimeter. Every step was technically by the book. The Admiral looked at me for a long moment, and I could see he understood everything I wasn't saying. A flicker of something, justice, maybe, passed through his eyes. He gave a single, curt nod. "Log it as a readiness exercise, Commander. I want a full after-action report on my desk by 0800. That was all I needed. I stepped out and called Master Chief Styx. He listened silently as I explained the situation, using the official terminology of the operation. When I finished, there was a pause on the line. And then I heard a sound that sent a chill down my spine, the sound of him letting out a slow, dangerous grin. "Extracting a high-value grandma, ma'am?" "Understood," he said, his voice laced with grim satisfaction. "Spinning up the QRF. The boys will love this." Before I could reply, I heard him barking orders in the background, his voice a model of crisp efficiency. Weapons check. M4S on safe blanks and training mags only. This is a public-facing op looking sharp. We roll in 5. The orders were logged. The vehicles were mobilized under official exercise protocols. Uncle Dave was about to get a masterclass in logistics and operational reach, delivered directly to his front door. He had no idea he wasn't just late to pick up Grandma, he was about to become the centerpiece of a military demonstration. Through the thick ballistic glass of the Humvee, I saw the airport terminal approaching. It looked like a toy building. Inside my head I could picture the scene perfectly, my Uncle Dave finally strolling in 20 minutes late, radiating an aura of self-importance. He'd make a show of it, clapping his hands together and announcing, "Sorry, Elle got held up," as if his time was gold and hers was sand. He would be completely oblivious to the low rumble of our convoy, a sound that was growing from a distant vibration into an earth-shaking pronouncement of our arrival. For him, the world was a stage, and he was its only star. He was about to be upstaged. Our 5 vehicles didn't just pull into the parking lot, they executed a synchronized flanking maneuver, sweeping into position with terrifying precision. They didn't take parking spots, they established a dominant perimeter, their heavy frames blocking the entrance and exit lanes. The low rumble cut to a rumbling idle, and in the sudden relative quiet, the side doors of all 5 Humvees opened in perfect unison. 50 men, my men, disembarked. They moved with a chilling, silent purpose, fanning out to secure the area, their gear making only the faintest rustling sounds. They didn't shout, they didn't run. Their calm, professional presence alone sucked all the air out of the parking lot. The world froze. I stepped out. The setting sun glinted off my gear, and I felt 100 pairs of eyes lock onto me. I walked past the stunned sheriff's deputy, my boots crunching softly on the asphalt, my Master Chief, Styx, falling into step just behind my right shoulder. I entered the terminal, the automatic doors sliding open with a soft whoosh, and there he was, just as I'd pictured, mid-bluster. He saw me, and his mouth fell open, a half-formed excuse dying on his lips. I didn't even look at him. My eyes found my grandmother sitting patiently, her purse in her lap. The years of him belittling me, of dismissing my life's work, of treating me like an errant child. It all coalesced into this one moment of pure, focused action. I walked straight to her, my stride even and measured, stopping 2 feet in front of her. I gave her a slight, respectful nod, my voice carrying clearly through the silent terminal. "Grandma Eleanor," I said, pitching my voice to be heard. "I'm Commander Riley. My team and I are your escort." For a second, she just looked at me, confused. Then, as she took in my uniform, the men standing at the entrance, and the expression on my face, a slow, magnificent smile spread across her lips. It was a smile of pure, unadulterated pride. 2 of my SEALs moved forward silently, gently taking her luggage from her hands. Master Chief Styx stepped up, offering her his arm with a courtly deference that would have suited a king. "Ma'am," he said, his voice a low, respectful rumble. "We have a climate-controlled vehicle waiting for you." That's when Dave finally found his voice, his face turning a blotchy, furious red. "Alex, stop this nonsense. This is insane. You're embarrassing the family," he shrieked, his voice cracking. I turned to face him then, my expression utterly flat, my mind in the calm, analytical state of an operator assessing a threat. "You were tasked with ensuring her welfare," I stated, my words cold and procedural. "You failed. Your designated responsibility has been revoked." The official language, devoid of any family connection, hit him like a physical blow. He puffed up his chest, preparing to argue, to pull rank as the family patriarch. But then his eyes flickered to Styx, who hadn't moved a muscle but whose mere presence was an immovable wall of intimidation. And just like that, my uncle deflated. The bluster, the arrogance, the lifetime of unearned authority. It all evaporated under the fluorescent lights of that tiny airport. He was no longer the big man, the local celebrity. He was just an obstacle, a failed objective. He had spent a lifetime demanding respect he didn't earn. In the end, he was rendered speechless by a show of force he couldn't possibly comprehend, brought on by the one person in the family he never took seriously. We drove away from the airport as the sun finally dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Inside the lead Humvee, the atmosphere wasn't tense or triumphant, it was strangely peaceful. My grandmother, Eleanor, sat beside me, her back ramrod straight, looking out the window not with fear, but with the wide-eyed wonder of a child on a grand adventure. She didn't say a word, but she reached over and squeezed my hand, a silent acknowledgement that she understood everything. Behind us, we left my uncle standing alone in the middle of a parking lot, a shrinking figure in a sea of staring faces and raised cell phones. The legend of Operation Silver Guardian was already being written, one text message at a time. 3 months later, I was on a video call with her from my office on base. The connection was clear, and she was beaming, her living room bright and cheerful behind her. "Oh, you should have seen it, Alex," she said, letting out a delighted cackle. "We were at the church potluck last week, and the way people avoided Dave was a sight to behold. They just walked right past him like he was a ghost." She leaned closer to the screen, her eyes twinkling with mischief. "The mayor's wife asked me if you were single, and Mayor Thompson himself asked if I could get him your autograph. Your uncle hasn't said 2 words to me since." The bluster and arrogance that had defined his entire life had been replaced by a sullen, neutered silence. The town's social hierarchy hadn't just been shaken, it had been completely inverted. For the first time, respect was being paid to the right person. My real family, I learned, wasn't the one I was born into, but the one I had forged in sweat and loyalty. A few weeks after the incident, I was at the motor pool, overseeing my team as they cleaned and prepped their gear. The air smelled of diesel and gun oil, the scent of my real home. Master Chief Styx came over, handing me a steaming mug of coffee. He looked at me with his usual deadpan expression. "The boys officially voted, ma'am," he said, his voice completely serious. "Your grandma is now our team's official mascot. They've already stenciled Eleanor's own on the lead vehicle's bumper." I looked over and saw it, in clean white military script. A genuine, warm smile spread across my face, the kind my family back home rarely saw. These men, this team, they were my brothers. They understood loyalty in a way my uncle never could. It was during that video call with Grandma that my phone buzzed with a text. I glanced down and saw the name. It was from my mother, Linda, a woman who always believed that keeping the peace was more important than upholding justice. The message read, "Alex, your uncle is miserable. Everyone is treating him like a pariah. Can't you just call him and smooth things over for the family's sake?" For a moment I felt the old pull, the familiar tug of guilt she was so skilled at wielding. I looked up from my phone at the screen, at my grandmother's happy, smiling face, her laughter echoing softly through my office. I thought of my men, of the loyalty they showed her, a woman they'd never even met. I looked back at the text message, a plea to return to a broken system, to pretend the injustice never happened. And with a calm I had never felt before, I simply archived the message. I didn't reply. I didn't rage. I just let it go. My peace was no longer their property to grant or withhold. My uncle believed power came from being the loudest voice in a small room. I learned that true authority is shown not by what you say, but by what you can do for the people you love. If you've ever had to move heaven and earth for family, share your story below. In this community, your mission is always understood.